Hello, people. This is Frank Sav again. Gave you a couple days to digest the first readings of Douglas Jerrod, which you can find at Douglas Jerrod and SamsonPWillings.com to get all your information on the books that I am reading, which is Douglas Jerrod. Douglas Jerrod. It's a very interesting book, and I'm putting it on the internet so you can visually see how great it is. So, without further ado, I will continue the reading on Chapter 2 of Douglas Jerrod. Douglas Jerrod. Alright. We're still in the blue-eyed section. Chapter 2, Green-Eyed Man. Dr. Scott sat across from Douglas, awaiting Douglas's outrageous story of another existence of his conscious of this man's being. As the doctor waited through the silence, awaiting Douglas to recall what his so-called other life was like, he began to wonder if this man's story was the truth in his mind, or if it was just a made-up episode to cover up for the actions of insanity. Within the time of his waiting, he started to doodle a small little comic strip of this meeting. After finishing up the strip, the two orderlies came back into the room to retrieve the crazed man. Well, Douglas, that is our time today. I haven't told you about my real life yet. I would have to wait until tomorrow for your story. The doctor looked to the orderlies as they stood Douglas up from his chair carefully. He observed closely to make sure that the two men took care in retrieving the patient. He then opened his briefcase and placed all his materials in it. He closed and latched the briefcase while Douglas began to be escorted out of the room. I believe that the patient is fully calmed down and can be placed back into the general population. Are you sure? This one is a wily one. Yes, it is my professional opinion, and as his psychologist, I recommend it. You're the doc. Douglas, we will talk tomorrow. The orderlies led Douglas out of the rec room from his meeting with Dr. Scott and down to the general population in the main hall. As Douglas was escorted down the hallway to the main hall, he stared up at the lights that lined the hall and began to count them mentally. 1 open, 2 ton, 3 town, 4 fence. One of the orderlies opened up the door as they reached the main hall entrance. The other orderly unstrapped the straitjacket almost simultaneously. I don't know why. I don't know what you did when you were with the doctor, but I will be watching you. 5-4. We are here, in the base. Get in there, 64. The orderly pushed Douglas lightly into the crowded room of lost souls called patients that haunted every inch of the facility. Douglas slowly waded his way through the patients while he stayed fixed, looking at the ceiling. He carefully slid past a patient that stood straight up in the middle of the hall. As soon as he passed the living statue that stood motionless, he tapped an open metal folding chair that was in front of a window. He quickly sat down in the chair and directed his gaze through the chicken wire that kept the crazy in, but let the trapped within look out. While Douglas sat in front of the window peering out to the world outside, a female patient strolled nonchalantly up to a chair next to him and sat down. She tried to sit still as she could while she squirmed and shook like her body was rejecting the very skin that covered her body. After a few seconds of uncontrollable vibrating, she slid her hand down the front of her pants and began to move her fingers over her crotch, which seemed to be the only thing to calm the shaking. She turned to Douglas and gazed upon him like she knew him as she continued to stimulate herself. "Hey, Douglas, what is up?" "Oh yeah, right there." "Nothing, Eve. What are you up to?" "More of the... Oh, God. Same. Trying to control my urges. Oh. Listen to a doctor tell me what I have... Listen to a doctor tell me that I have a sex addiction. Speaking of doctors, have you met the new Dr. Scott?" Yes. He is a handsome one." "Yes, I have had the pleasure of meeting Edwin. He seems like a nice fellow. You could do worse, Eve." "I would do some special things with that tasty morsel of humanity." "Oh, yes. Dr. Scott, please." "That's nice, Eve, but never mind that. Could you watch over me? You going to connect with the green-eyed one again?" "Oh, my word. Yes, just continue as you are and watch my body, okay?" "I would be glad..." "Oh, here it comes. Oh yeah, that feels better. I would be glad too." Douglas closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep-like trance. He carefully navigated through his mind, past all the deeply seated memories of his childhood. The time he hit a deep ball to left field. That was the only hit he had that year. Next up were the more recent memories. Oh, the reason that he was placed in the facility. Losing his mind on that stranger that later didn't exist. That is why they all thought he was delusional, seeing things and making up stories. It was normal for a 4-year-old, like a boy's imaginary friend named Ted, but a 40-year-old man? That is just not acceptable behavior for a grown man. After that horrid moment of a place and time that he would rather forget, Douglas went through his dreams. The one of him just riding his motorcycle around the world. Hey, the opera singing dream, as he stood in front of thousands while he performed the masterpiece Requiem Dies Irae. Such a beautiful performance that he admired himself for a second. Then the reason for his inner reflection, the part of his mind that he had accessed before, the part that linked him to what he believed to be his real life, a direction release from the facility to the green-eyed version of himself. "Hey, sweetie, it is time to get up." "What time is it, dear?" 8:05. "Alright. There is no reason for the There is no rest for the wicked. Not until you put them away. Oh, don't forget to call your dad later. It is his birthday." Douglas got out of bed and proceeded to perform his morning ritual in this life, while Carol, his wife in this timeline, made breakfast. The whole time he was cleaning himself in the shower, he thought of his father, Joe. It has been a while since he had talked to his dad with him passing away in the other life, he must have beaten his cancer in this timeline. As he put on his suit and tie, he anticipated speaking with the old man later. After he was all done up for the day, he made his way to the smell of eggs, bacon, and coffee that permitted from the... It will be a pleasure to talk with the good old Joe again. Who's Joe?
Dad. That is my dad. No, Fred is your father. Unless that is your nickname for your father. Douglas sat dumbfounded in front of his breakfast that was on the table before him. Maybe his dad's name was Fred in this life, but that was the name of his son in his other life. He took a bite of his eggs and a drink of his coffee as he pondered about the name switch up. Everything seemed as it should except for that. I'm having a problem recalling my dad's phone number. Could you help me? Of course, sweetheart. Here you go. Carol took out a piece of paper to write down the number for Douglas and retrieved a pen from the glass cup with Mickey on it after looking for a second. She then quickly clicked the pen to write, placed the pen to the paper, and hurriedly jotted down the number, 404-3526. She handed the paper with the number on it to him as she glanced over at the time. 8:45, she read before hurrying Douglas up from the table and for the door. Now, you have a great day. Carol leaned in and kissed Douglas. She grabbed his coat for him and a thermal mug with some coffee for the road. She opened the door for him and raced him through it. Then she slowly closed the door behind him. I wonder what that was all about. Douglas stated out loud at Carol's actions. He then looked to his watch on his wrist. 8:49. That is why she rushed him out of the house. She didn't want him to be late again. Not on his dad's birthday. She didn't want the celebration that was set up for later that evening to be ruined by bad news. Douglas rushed to the stairs, opened the stairwell door quickly, and hustled down the 6th flight of stairs. There was no time to wait on the elevator, not with only 10 minutes to get to work. He ran through the lobby and out the front door to his apartment building. As he was standing on the sidewalk outside trying to hail a cab, he quickly glanced to his watch for the time. 8:52. A cab pulled up right as he directed his attention back to the street. He immediately jumped in. To the police station and quickly. I only have 5 minutes to get to work. Are you sure, man? I don't want to be ticketed again. Not to worry, my friend. I'm a cop. Officer Douglas Jerrod at your service. Just make the trip as fast as you can and I will handle the ticket if it comes to that. Whatever you say, Officer Jerrod. You're the boss. The cabbie swiftly put the cab into drive and began his best impersonation of a NASCAR driver as he weaved in and around traffic. While the cab driver tried his best to work with the time he was given, Douglas's mind went into overdrive. Why was his dad's name in this life Fred? His dad's name in the other life was Joe. This life has so many different surprises. Was this last thought as the cab pulled... Oh, was his last thought as the cab pulled in front of the police station. "All right, we are here with seconds to spare. What will be... Oh, that will be 10:24. Here you go, and here is a 20 for your trouble." "No problem. Anytime, Officer Jerrod. I will keep that in mind before I take off. Can you tell me today's date?" "Yeah, sure. It is July 31st, 1995. "Thanks." Douglas reached for the door handle, opened it, and stepped out of the cab and onto the sidewalk. As he walked into the building at 8:59, right on time, he wondered about the date that was just told to him. "My son Fred was born on July 31st in 1944. What if this is some kind of space-time travel deal? If Fred is my father now, then have I connected with my grandson in some higher plane? And if so, how did this happen?" He thought hypothetically while he made his way to his office. Just as Douglas stepped through the door to his office, he felt a light tug on his shoulder, like something trying to wake him from a slumber. He turned quickly into the direction of the tug, curious to what person would be doing that action to find himself back in front of the window in the facility. He found that the tugs came from Eve, who was still sitting with him in the main hall. While he still adjusted to being back in the ward, he noticed that he was clinging to something in his hand. He opened up his hand to find the something was the piece of paper that Carol had given him at the apartment. "What are you doing, Eve? I was on to something. You told me to watch over you, and that is what I am doing. They are sending us back to our rooms. Some of the others here started a fight with each other." "Well, crazy does what crazy does. We should do as the orderlies say." Douglas and Eve both stood up from their chairs and proceeded to go to their respective ways. Douglas went to the men's ward of the facility and Eve to the women's, while they both watched the brutal takedown of the rowdy bunch of crazies. Douglas observed that if they just cooperated with what their overseers were ordering, the crazies wouldn't have to fight so hard. As he walked through the entrance of the men's ward, he viewed the orderlies finally take control of the violent patients. And just like it started, the show was quickly stopped. And that is number 2 for today. Thank you. This is Frank Sapp reading Douglas Jerrod. One of the best books that I've ever written. Remember, Douglas Jerrod and SamsonPWillings.com for any more information on Douglas Jerrod. Frank, out.